Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time we're going to check out DaVinci Resolve 17. This is the latest version of the best free video editor. So let's go and take a closer look. Right, here we are on the DaVinci Resolve page on the BlackMagic Design website, where as you can see we can download DaVinci Resolve 17. And when we've pressed on that link you'll see there are two versions of DaVinci Resolve, and it's important to distinguish between the two. Over here on the left we have download links for DaVinci Resolve 17, currently in beta, although I've never had any problems running beta versions of BlackMagic Design software. Anyway, DaVinci Resolve itself is the free version of the package, whereas over here we have DaVinci Resolve Studio download links, and DaVinci Resolve Studio is the paid version of DaVinci Resolve. It's still a very good value program. It's $299 as a one-off payment, no ongoing subscriptions with DaVinci Resolve, but do be clear, if you download DaVinci Resolve Studio over here, you will get a trial of DaVinci Resolve Studio, which will be time limited. Whereas over here, if you download DaVinci Resolve, you will get a free video editing package. It is not time limited, it is not watermarked, it is not constrained. This is just fantastic free software. And every time I make a video about DaVinci Resolve, I get comments from people saying, "Chris, you're lying to us, it isn't free. I downloaded it was a trial." That's because you downloaded from the links on the right. You must download DaVinci Resolve if you want the free version from the links here on the left. As you can see, there are versions available for Mac, for Windows and for Linux, although the Linux version is only officially supported for CentOS. And so here I'm going to download the Windows version. And as you can see, we now get to a page where we need to enter some details. I'll just use the arrows to zoom out to get the whole thing on the screen. People often miss the register and download button if you don't do that. And here you have to enter some details in, which I'll do now. And if you're wondering, I've filled in this screen several times before over many years. You do get occasional emails from BlackMagic Design about latest versions of their products, but they don't send out spam. I've never had any problems with that. So if we just click on register and download, we can now download a zip file of DaVinci Resolve 17.02. And there we are, I'll save it into my DaVinci Resolve directory. And whilst that's coming down, you can see it's 2.2 gigabytes. It's worth pointing out the system requirements for DaVinci Resolve, which are relatively high. You'll need 16 gigabytes of RAM, ideally 32 gigabytes of RAM to work with 4K footage and the Fusion Effects part of the package. And you'll also need a GPU with at least 2 gigabytes of video RAM, and the latest GPU drivers really need to be installed. Now, having pointed out these system requirements for DaVinci Resolve 17, if you've got a computer that doesn't meet them, you may be able to run an earlier version of DaVinci Resolve. And BlackMagic Design very kindly make available links to all of their previous versions of the package. And to get them, all you need to do is to go to the BlackMagic Design support page, as you can see here. And if we scroll down here, you will see latest downloads are listed in a very long section, which scrolls down forever and ever and ever, going back a very long point in time. So if, for example, you want to go back to DaVinci Resolve 14, which will run in 8 gigabytes of RAM, it'll still run in Windows 7. We could just do a Control F here for search here in Windows, and I could go DaVinci Resolve 14 and a space to get the first version of the package. And if I just go down a little bit, you can see different versions coming up. Where have we got to? There's 14.2. We could get back to the original 14 if we really wanted to, I'm sure, down here somewhere. Let's just keep flicking that down to prove the point, and I'm sure you could find it. And there we are, there is DaVinci Resolve 14. So if I wanted DaVinci Resolve 14, I could click on the Windows link there, and we would go back to a screen just like one we saw, and we could download that earlier version of the package. So this is worth knowing just as an aside if you want to run DaVinci Resolve, but your hardware doesn't support the latest version. Right, here we are on a Windows 10 desktop where we've installed DaVinci Resolve. And the installation process is very straightforward, but it is worth noting that it'll remove any previous version of DaVinci Resolve from your computer. And for this reason, here I've installed DaVinci Resolve 17 Beta on my test rig, which is a relatively low power machine. It's got a quad-core 3 GHz AMD A83870K processor, 2GB GT1030 graphics card, although it does have 16GB of RAM. But admittedly, our test hardware here is relatively low end for DaVinci Resolve, but the program will work. And so let's fire it up. There we are. And one of the first things it'll do when we do fire it up is to say it's looking for a control surface. There it is down there. And this will last a very long time the first time you launch the package after installation, so do not be alarmed when that happens. And the reason it happens is that BlackMagic Design makes all kinds of edit control hardware, ranging from its speed editor, as you can see here, through to its editor keyboard, to 3 different color grading panels, and various audio control consoles. And so you know when you're using DaVinci Resolve that you're really running very high-end professional software. And indeed, BlackMagic Design is basically a hardware company making cameras and post-production equipment, with DaVinci Resolve very much being a means to an end. Anyway, here we are now entering DaVinci Resolve. Let's pick up a test edit to show you. What I'm going to do is go through the basics of the package quite quickly, and then we'll go back and look at the workflow in a bit more detail. But as you can see here, we're definitely in the video editor. If I press the spacebar to play, you'll see it's playing. Oh look, it's explaining computers. Title sequence from a video a few years old, so it'll be a slightly older version of a title sequence, but it's going to work perfectly well. There we are, we're playing my LattePanda Alpha week video. We can scrub our timeline, move around, we can start playing again if we wish to. As you can see, it all works as you would expect. And as in any video editor, we can zoom out and we can zoom in to move around and navigate by using the scroll bar at the bottom. But also in DaVinci Resolve, we've got one of many pages across the bottom of the screen. You can see it's based upon 7 pages. One of the pages here is called Cut. And if we go to the cut page rather than the edit page, you'll see we've got the entire edit across the top of the display here. You always see the entire edit at the top of the display. And we can play by going into pressing spacebar again and playing here, no problems at all. But we could also scrub across the whole edit very quickly. We could go to somewhere different. We could go, I don't know, over there. And if I now go back to the edit screen, we've moved around in the edit. And that's quite handy. You can use the cut page to do sort of broad brushstrokes of your work, move around in the edit, review footage, that type of thing, and use the editing screen to do the more traditional sort of nitty-gritty of editing. One of the next pages along is the Color tab. We'll leave Fusion for now. Color is very much where DaVinci Resolve excels. It started life as a color grading package, and the tools we've got here for doing color grading really are very, very good indeed. If you want to do color work, DaVinci Resolve really is the package to use. It's a node-based system. You basically attach nodes to the individual shots you're working on, and you can use this for not just things like color grading, but also effects like green screen. And indeed, I made a video all about doing green screen work in DaVinci Resolve a few years back. I made it, I think, using DaVinci Resolve 14, but everything I covered in that video still works here. We also have here a page for audio, fantastic audio page using the Fairlight audio editor. I just play again, you'll see all the little meters moving around, everything working very nicely. It really is an amazingly good audio package here. And let's just stop that. And if we look here, we've got an effects library, which is fantastic, with all the things you need for doing audio work are here, and some are brought together. So for example, we take the dialogue processor, drag it across to a dialogue clip, you will see we can do all the basic stuff we need to do, depopping, de-essing, compressing, expanding, all of it is here in these effects. We've also got a sound library, or at least you can install a sound library. When you first run up DaVinci Resolve, there's a little button down here for installing, and if you press that and accept the license and do a download, you get the sound library. Let's just find a few things in the sound library. Let's search for, I don't know, glass. There are always effects for things like glass. Oh look, there's a glass break effect. And there we are. Oh, we could have hours of fun playing effects like this. If you want to see all the effects here, just do a star for the wildcard, and you'll see loads and 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 loads of effects. So many effects it's difficult to grab the slider to see what they all are, but there's loads and loads of effects. Oh, coins dropped. Duct tape rip. That must be an exciting effect. Oh yes. Very exciting indeed. You've got all the basics here you need to add those little bits and pieces you edit very nicely with these sound effects. On the end, we've got the Deliver page, which allows us to produce final films. We could, for example, here go for the YouTube preset, give this a title, and then we can simply add this to the render queue over there, And then if we wanted to render this out, we just press render all and it would render the video. Finally, if we go across to the Fusion page, I will show you it. There it is. Fusion is a node-based 2D and 3D effects package and compositor, which has got so much functionality for doing effects work and compositing work, I can't even hope to cover it in a video like this. But again, I have talked about it now and then in videos in the past. Maybe I'll make a whole video introducing Fusion functionality in the future. Right, it's now time to talk about workflow, or in other words, those things you really need to know if you're new to DaVinci Resolve and want to start using it. So let's launch the package again, and as it loads up, you may be wondering what's new in DaVinci Resolve 17 compared to previous versions. Well, BlackMagic Design report over 100 new features and 200 improvements, including new HDR grading tools and refined audio editing controls. However, at least in the free version, what we have are lots of incremental improvements rather than any signature new functionality. To me at least, the package just feels richer and more polished, even in beta, but with no standout new features. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. You can get to a point with a piece of software where all the things you need are really there, and it just keeps getting better and better. Anyway, here we are in the Project Manager, which you see when you first launch DaVinci Resolve, and a key thing to point out here is that DaVinci Resolve does not save each edit in its own project file. Rather, multiple projects are stored in a single database, which for some of us complicates workflow and backups, as it makes it harder to keep all the files for every production you're working on in one place. For example, here we have got 6 edits and the opportunity to create a new untitled project or do a new project down there. These are all in this single local database, the default database. You might need to click this button to see this. This is the button here for Show Hide Databases. I always have that opened up so I can see what database I'm working in. Now, keeping everything in one database may be okay for you. You might like to keep all of your chickens in one basket, and you might be prepared to back this thing up regularly using the backup button which we've got up here, which would save a backup database file. But my strong advice if you're doing a lot of editing is you should have multiple databases. And indeed, one possibility is to create a new database for every project, which can be created in the folder along with all the media files for that project. And in fact, down here I've got a sort of sample folder I use for running my projects when I'm making videos, where I've got folders for audio and final video, things that were shot, etc. And if I wanted to do a database in that folder, I could do a new database down here, and we'd have to click on Create. It needs to be a disk-based database, to be on a local disk. We'll click to select a directory, test video. I'm going to go and click on Resolve Database. You cannot create a database in a folder with other things in it. It has to be in an empty folder, so I created that for the purpose. And we could call it, I don't know, Project Database. And note you can't use uppercase characters in your database name. And if we now click on Create, you'll see it'll create a database. There we are, and we can flick back and forth. This is clearly the database we're now working in, but we could go back to the other database to see the files we're working on, the projects we're working on there. Oh, and by the way, you can view these in a normal text format if you want to do that. Anyway, we can go back to our project database there, and we can now do a new project, which you could call our project, something like that, create that, and we now have a new empty edit in which we could work. And just to show what's gone on here, if we go back to the folder, you'll see inside Resolve Database, it's created Resolve Projects, and inside there we've got settings, which are XML files, and inside that we've also got users, and we've got admin with configs. Yes, lots of things get created, but at least if you put everything inside one folder, you can back up everything here and keep it with you. I, for example, whenever I leave my home, always keep a copy of every project I'm working on my person, and that's easy to do if you've got everything stored in a single folder. This said, creating a separate database for every project becomes very cumbersome, and to be honest, I've never really figured out the best way of handling this in DaVinci Resolve. So my best advice here is always to remain aware of what database you're working in, where it is located, and to keep regular backups. Now, the second key thing to show you is the workflow required for editing in DaVinci Resolve. Here in the new project we've just created, we've arrived in the cut page, and you might be tempted to start working straight away here in the cut page or indeed in the edit page. And I remember years ago when I first tried out DaVinci Resolve, I went straight to the edit page, tried to pull in footage, tried to make it work, couldn't, gave up, eventually read the manual and found out how this works. And what you need to do is to start out in the media page here in the media pool. And what you do here up top is to navigate to where your footage is. So here it's on this SSD and it's in our test video there under 1080p. Here I've got 3 clips. These are not yet available to us to edit with. We first have to select them, drag them down into the media pool, and you can see we've got the clips there. And I can now select that clip there. You can see information about it. I could go back to the start there and play it, working perfectly well. We've got a clip available for use. I can now go through to the edit page, grab the clip and drag it down onto the timeline like that. And you'll see it can appear different ways on the timeline. I've got my settings here for what I think they call simple view, but if you wanted to have pictures all the way along it, you can do that if you wish, or pictures at the end, but I like to work with a simple view. And we'll just zoom in to get a bit more of the clip on the screen. And of course, if I press the play here, I could press the spacebar on the keyboard, it would play through and we can see the clip working perfectly well. Now, we might want to add a second clip. We could just drag a second clip down to the timeline, or for example, we could take our pink flowers there and put them by double clicking through into the source monitor here, and we could now play them up here. Maybe see what's going on with the pink flowers wafting in the wind. There they are. Oh, a bit of wafting has gone on there, so we'll now stop. Maybe that's our in point. We can set our in point. And maybe we don't want very much. Maybe that's going to be out point somewhere around here. That'll be okay. We'll set our stop it and set our out point. And we can now drag that down to the timeline, and we've got 2 clips. We could put it at the end if we want a straight cut like that. That would work fine. But if we want to do something more exciting with it, we'll overlap it with an A-B thing. We get a straight cut there, but we could go back and, for example, grab the handles at the top, put a nice long dissolve in, and if we play that, it will dissolve across gradually onto the lovely pink flowers. We might also want to do things like picture in picture. People are always very excited about that, so let's put that down there and go back down there. We'll leave a little bit of a dissolve, maybe like, oops, I know what I'm doing, honestly, we'll do that. And if we want to do that as picture in picture, you would go to the inspector, because the inspector is where you can transform a clip, we can transform things and we can animate this transformation if we wish. But here we'll just zoom that clip down a bit, maybe like that, and position it across maybe like that, and position it up maybe like that. And if we now play this, we're going to have our face printer, and then we're going to see our pink flowers coming up as a nice little dissolve into a picture in picture. Yes, there they are on the top of the screen. And it's worth pointing out, if you want to play your clip in full screen, press P, and you've now got a full screen view of what you're editing in your editing screen. So when you've done that, you might want to then work on, for example, color. You might want to go to the color tab over here, the color page. There's our face printer shot. We've got the curves brought up here. We might want to just have a little bit of embellishment like that, sort of push it up with the curves, rather severe, but maybe you might want to do that. And then when you've finished sorting everything out, you go across to deliver, as I showed you in the opening segment, where here I've set up the output to be a YouTube clip. I've given it a location. We simply add to the render queue, and if we press render all, it'll render out our small project. And by the magic of filmmaking and fast forward, there it is, it's finished. And if we go to our folder, there it is, there's our test output. If we play it, hopefully, and Alt Enter, there we are. Oh yes, we've made our first video in DaVinci Resolve 17. If you want to install a free professional video editor, then right now you can't do better than opting for DaVinci Resolve 17. The only downsides are the hardware requirements, which are significant, and for me at least, the database-based workflow. This said, all professional video editors require a powerful PC. DaVinci Resolve is no different in that respect, and whilst it would be great to be able to save individual project files, it's not a deal breaker. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.